But then, what is the last time then did you flew too high? Maybe after the last album, well, you had a contract with Sony, and then you recorded Skybound with your own, independently. Was that something to do with the theme, the Icarus theme, for you?
Well, the idea of, the front cover, the man with his arms, that's Icarus. But it was the idea of hope. It was the gesture of dreams, the gesture of defiance, that regardless, you can do what you want to do if you have enough commitment to it. The last time I flew the analogy of flying too high or too low or too close to the sun is really more of a personal thing. I wouldn't say that it was something that I would associate to being with Sony or being, not being with Sony. It was more to do with personal experiences.
So not really with the musical, I mean not the decision Sony or not, but I mean with, you trying to be a musician and then maybe, first album and then, maybe you got a bit depressed, I don't know.
Yeah.
And
well, I think the thing
and then maybe you're more vulnerable to that sort of themes, maybe. You think, hey, this is really what is happening to my life now.
I think...
or am I guessing now? I am guessing, but...
No, that's cool. I think that you, even if when you're growing up, or I'm still growing up, we're all growing up, you're on a continuous journey to try and discover the real, truthful, peaceful part of yourself. To try and discover the thing. I think everybody's got a talent, everybody's got something unique. And I think if you can find that one thing that's unique and be at peace with it, then that's when you start to address the balance. I think that when you are not clear on feeling comfortable being unique or finding it very easy to go against the grain of what other people think, or you should do this because this is what everyone else is doing, or you should do this, why don't you, here we have another album that sounds like Amy Winehouse, that's great, well done, well done. If you want to do that, fine, but I think the important thing is for people to find their true path, whether people like it or not. I mean, there are people who like my music and there'll be people who don't like my music. But if I'm too worried about whether people like my music or not, it means that I'm not really in that balance, I'm going to be up, down, all over the place. And when you're growing up, I think you're trying to, particularly in my 20s, I experienced this. I committed all my time to music, so all I did was music. But of course, there's not just music in life. To be an artist, to be a painter, to be a musician, to be a poet, you've got to live in life. You can't just play the guitar all day, every day, and talk to just musicians. You've got to talk to people who talk about politics. You've got to talk to people who talk about nature. You've got to talk to people who talk about environment. You've got to talk to less fortunate people. You've got to talk to rich people, poor people.
Or else you're going to write songs about songwriting.
Yeah. Otherwise, you write songs about practicing the guitar. It's not. That's not songwriting, is it really? Yeah. There's a lot of musicians I found when I went to music college who understand the principles of playing music. They understand the idea of good music, and they can replicate it perfectly. But if you ask them to actually produce something truthful, even when they're amazing musicians, I know jazz musicians who are incredible. I know session guitar players, drummers, but incredible musicians. But actually, if you ask them to actually document something that represents them vulnerably, sometimes that's very hard for people to do, and it's interesting. And it really makes you realise that there's a method to everything. And in a way, it's like with painting. It's why a lot of artists try to discourage the method and go back to the childlike style of painting. Because it gets back to the real original truth. I never understood that when I was at art school.
When did you find out then?
When did I? Well, I'm always.
No, what I mean, okay, but there's one point that triggered you, or one event or one thing that happened that must have triggered
Yeah,
you
yeah.
in this realization?
Yeah, well, basically, extreme depression. When I had a very, very, when I flew too close to the sun, I suppose, and all of my hopes and expectations were set on one thing. And I lost my relationship, I lost, you know, my home.
When was this?
This is about 27. So for me, through that experience, I stopped playing music for about 2 years, and I did other stuff. I was working as a painter and decorator. I was unemployed for some times. I was very lost. And in that place of loss and being lost, I experienced a very, very extreme sense of meaninglessness. But in that extreme sense of meaninglessness, you can often find an extreme sense of purposefulness. And the profoundness of life can become very clear because you realise that everything is profound, not just one thing, or not just music, or, you know, films, or famous actors. Or,
I think it's just being you.
Just becoming like when you walk down the street, you know, when you walk down the street and you really look up and you just really notice that it's autumn and all the leaves are falling. Yeah. That is that sort of moment of profound experience, which I think I don't know if I really was experiencing that when I was in my early 20s, and that's developed by going through a hard time and coming out the other end, I suppose.
Nice ending.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. Pleasure.